I think that people who work in collaborative roles at work are probably having some of the most challenging days during the pandemic. I mean, when you go from a face to face interaction to only Zoom or WebEx, it challenges even the most adept communicator. So, if you're lucky enough to be working remotely, how has working remotely affected your interactions and relationships with your coworkers? And what do you use as your relief valve during the day when you're spending it all sitting on video conference meetings? One last plug, my friends. Election Day is next Tuesday. I've said it before and I feel like it's worth repeating one last time. I sincerely believe that you having a right to vote as you choose without risk of disenfranchisement is the cornerstone of a modern civilization. And not everyone out there in our leadership feels the same. So if you haven't voted already, make sure you have a plan and above all else, vote. Because this year, our lives do depend on it. Noelle Stransky is a user experience design strategist for brands such as ZipRecruiter, Livestrong.com, and the Active Network. She's also spent time working in the gaming industry at Microsoft Xbox and is currently working on internal tooling at Riot Games. When Noelle isn't busy leveraging her technical and creative talents to craft a world-class design, she can usually be found building massive art installations for Burning Man out of wood, metal, fire effects, and LEDs. Noelle, thanks for joining the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. It's nice to be here.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do?
I am a user experience designer. So I'm responsible for the initial design and planning of websites and mobile applications and internal tools. So I've done a lot of work in the mobile space, working on different consumer mobile applications. So more recently at ZipRecruiter, working on their job seeker mobile application. Okay. And then I've also spent a lot of time working in the 10-foot space, which is industry jargon for like TVs, consoles, so I've gone from like the little tiny screen to a really big screen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and currently I'm working with Riot Games, working in internal tools.
Cool. What's the difference between the tools you're developing that are customer facing versus the tools you're developing for inside? Is there a different aesthetic for that?
No, it's a really interesting, so it's a space that's new to me. So starting with this position has been my first time going internal. I think traditionally internal facing things have not gotten a lot of love.
Yeah, I can vouch for that.
Yeah.
As a user internally of them.
Yeah, as anybody who's had to use internal software, it usually looks pretty bad. And I think usually teams just don't have a designer available. So what I'm trying to do is take the things that I know from consumer-facing products and bring it into internal tooling, because we're both external and internal consumers. Like if I can make it faster and easier for somebody to use something internally, like that just benefits everyone.
Yeah.
And now that we live our lives on a Zoom meeting, like anything to make our lives a little bit easier.
Oh, I hear you. It's funny. I've been in IT for a long time. I go back to the pre-tech transformation days, right? When a programmer had the responsibility of coming up with everything that went into the interface. And I remember one of the jobs I had a long time ago, I was writing code for a rental car company, and I got to write their customer reservation system, right? So basically, travel agents would use it to book car rentals because this was before the web. What was funny was the person who was originally writing the programs definitely wrote the programs for the computer and not for the people who had to use them. And so you'd have this interface come up and it would have 12 lines that you were entering data against on the interface. And every single line you'd enter it and it would redraw the screen, right? So when you're talking 50,000 records that have to be updated, it took a lifetime to get the work done. And one of the first things I did was go back and say, no. We have to start writing these things for the user, not for the computer. So having people who just think about the aesthetics of how these things work is really, really valuable, I think, to the users who have to use it. How are
Absolutely.
you? Where did you get trained for this kind of thing? Did you pick it up on your own? Did you have any kind of formal experience with it?
So I went to Western Washington University, which is up in Bellingham, Washington, and we
Okay.
had a back in my day, we had a web design program.
Okay.
So it was the school had a graphic design discipline, and we were split up between like traditional graphic design and web design. So I don't think even we were using the term UX designer then. It was just everyone was still a webmaster and a web designer.
Yeah.
And it was actually kind of the first job I got out of college. I was working at a little startup that had a product that it was like 5 years worth of blog articles and web pages that had just piled up and piled up. It was a
Yeah.
mess. And
Yeah.
I think that's really where I started learning more about information architecture and UX design and like the structure of the site being an experience. So I'd say like some of it I got in school, and then a lot of it was learned on the job, mostly out of necessity too. Um, just like
Okay.
we had a problem and I had to figure out how to fix the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the best way for it to go, right?
yeah.
Are you part of a bigger team that works on the user experience?
Not really actually. So I'm back kind of being a solo designer for at least my org currently. Um,
Okay.
but I do kind of have partnerships with other teams inside of Riot Games. So we have a couple other spots that have larger UX design teams. So just so I don't go crazy by
Huh.
myself alone in a corner, I try to kind of reach out and go to their meetings and bounce ideas off of them as well.
Do you have a lot of direct interaction with the user? What would be your user community for requirements and things like that?
Yeah, and that's actually the really interesting thing about doing internal tools at a kind of at least like mid-sized bigger company is like my user are kind of those admin company delivery leads, like folks kind of running the ship at Riot. So
Yeah.
it's actually been really easy to be able to just grab time on their calendars and talk with people directly.
Okay.
So like immediate feedback is like, and everyone at Riot is very good at like giving a lot of both positive and critical feedback and
Okay.
constructive feedback. Um, yeah, the only thing we run into is when I'm working on consumer applications, we could publish something and get data back from millions of people.
Right.
So we'd get a good idea of what was working, what was not working. Um,
Yeah.
Whereas when we're working internally, it's only a couple hundred. So
Yeah.
it like that data is not quite as strong.
Okay. It's a very collaborative business, it sounds like, what you're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
How has the pandemic affected you? Because I'm guessing that you're working from home, just like the rest of
Hmm.
us these days. Um, were you always working from home, or were you in the office most of the time before things shut down?
Yeah, I like primarily I was kind of always in an office with like the sporadic work from home day here or there.
Yeah.
I started this job the first week of January, so I got a good like 2 months, 2.5 months in physically at the office, which was super good because I got to at least build up some in person relationships
Yeah.
before being hidden away in my house quarantined.
Huh.
Uh, so yeah, it's been an interesting transition.
I've imagined that most of the work we do, we can do from remote, and the timing of this, if there's anything good that comes out of the timing of the pandemic, it's that it hit at a time when the tools for being able to work remotely were pretty much mature enough to be able to
Hmm.
work, right? I mean, we all have
Yeah,
VPN access, we all have tools like Zoom and things like that. But I can't imagine how the collaboration effort when you're sitting down in a conference room with a bunch of people and a whiteboard to work out things has changed and how we keep that going. What's your experience with that been like?
yeah. I mean, it's been an interesting process because we've tried some new tools that are a little bit more cloud-based whiteboarding tools. But it's hard because, especially in a video chat, you can't have three people talking at once.
Yeah.
You can kind of get away with that in person. But like in some ways, it's made the design process a little bit harder.
Yeah.
I am glad that for myself, since my stakeholders generally are like one or two people, that I can still get people on a video chat and then get pretty good engagement. But I do find it's a lot of time like hunting people down and being like, hey, I need you now. Let's let's chat.
Yeah, life was never as tightly scheduled back when we were doing things in person as they are now, because they have to be, right? You never know
Yeah.
where somebody's going to
Yeah.
be. You can't just walk over
Absolutely.
to their desk.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I've found too, like I'm assuming other people are feeling this as well too, but I'm just exhausted after
yeah,
like a lot of video meetings as well too. So having to be mindful of making sure that I've given myself the space to recover and be able to not be super bitchy or tired when
yeah.
I'm hopping into the next meeting.
No, that's an interesting point, because I've been working from home for a while, so I've been
Hmm.
doing some consulting and things like that. And when you spend 8 hours a day on a Zoom call, it's far more exhausting than just even spending, having 15 meetings and running back and forth around the office. It just, I don't know what it is about it that causes that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the forced focus that you have to have when you're staring at the screen. It's a little bit harder to hear what people are saying, especially in a crowded room.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
totally
and we're
understand.
lacking all of those in between like human interaction moments that like going to get water out of the sink and talking to a random coworker, or like it's all like now that I'm stuck at home, like I just sit at my desk for a long time.
Yeah,
um and I like will go harass my husband every once in a while just to like talk to somebody.
yeah,
But I forgot how much those like little interactions and even like walking from building to building kind of helped center me throughout the day and kind of relieve some of the stress. uh
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, the reason I call it the podcast relief valve is because I'm looking for those things that we have in our lives that help let the pressure off a little bit and make it
Hmm.
easier.
Yeah.
And not being in an office and having that chance to sit and chat for a few minutes is definitely one of those relief valves I miss in my life.
Yeah.
It definitely makes a difference. How has life itself changed for you since all of this started?
Oh. I mean, it's been crazy because, like, yeah, a lot of missing a lot of things.
Yeah,
Like, even now, I was just thinking back to like the before times and pre pandemic, how much I'd go out for dance classes and dinner with friends. And my husband and I are really active in the Burning Man community. So we were helping set up in person events for that. And just like not having that right now has been crazy, particularly since we have a lot of time on our hands, but not as much to do with it. Um,
have you
yeah,
have you have you found anything that helps fill some of those gaps?
yeah, we've been doing a lot of home projects. We are currently working on we're turning a like a landscaping trailer into a mini like living home trailer. Uh,
Okay.
so that's been phenomenal just to like, especially since I sit at a computer all day, to have something that is physical that I'm working with my hands and doing some like light construction work with. Um,
Okay.
that has been huge. And then we're also drowning ourselves in different crafts. So we started like checking out making armor and like prop weapons out of foam,
Nice.
and crafting. So like I think we both got like a giant backlog of different craft projects that
That's
we can we've got all the materials and we can just kind of work on stuff at home and be happy doing that.
that's very cool. One of the things my family and I have adopted has been watching the show Forged in Fire, where they're making
Oh.
like real swords and things like that.
Ooh.
And
I
I'm
will have to
like,
check that out.
yeah, it's very cool. It's on the History Channel, and just watching people take scrap metal and turn it into a fine weapon is amazing to watch. And probably the greatest thing for me is I don't have enough room to try to build a forge and learn how to do that on my own at home, because nothing good could possibly come of me, trying to melt steel and then turn it into something useful.
Yeah.
What kind of stuff did you do for Burning Man?
So we actually we work staff for both the event and some regional events.
Okay.
So for the Big Burn, I volunteer with a group that kind of helps build the city. So
Okay.
my group, we deal with some of the water trucks coming in. So I actually go around as a tank inspector,
Okay.
and then
So you just
my yeah.
how much water do they bring in for what is it?
Oh,
1 week or 2 weeks?
yeah. Oh, yeah. Personally, you should bring something like it's like 2.5 gallons per person per day.
Okay.
Um, and then you're looking at a week. It's a lot. And then yeah,
Yeah.
we bring in a lot of just industrial water for medical and the commissary and staff, and then just also having emergency water too. So like just in case we get stuck out there, that there's water available if there was a like terrible emergency.
Sure. It's a big event. How long does the planning up front take for it?
The event itself spans a week. The DPW crews that I'm a subset of start on Playa sometimes a month ahead of times,
Wow.
and some of them are even working as soon as like June and May in like San Francisco and Reno. So the event run like planning for it runs at least half the year, if not
Sure.
probably. Usually by the time the event is over, then everyone is starting to plan for the next year.
Do you move up there for that entire month, or do you go up on weekends? How does that work?
So I usually when I go out, it's only about 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks. So at that point, everybody has moved on to the playa surface. So yeah, I'll actually go out and be there for 3 weeks.
Okay.
My husband's on a crew that he goes out for a month. So usually he's out there before me and set up. So I get to kind of show up and move into the trailer.
Is that your vacation time every year, or do you
Yeah.
have enough that you can do other things? That's it, huh? That's where you get to go?
Yeah. Usually I'm able to like take one more little vacation or two here or there throughout the year. So I've been lucky to work at places that have the open or unlimited vacation policy. So um,
Okay.
I try to take like time a couple times a year just to decompress.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. What was the biggest challenge that you faced when it became clear that we were all going to have to shut our lives down and find some other way to work? What was the
Mhm.
biggest thing you had to do to change your life to get ready for that?
Yeah.
Get ready is probably not a good term either, since none of
Yeah.
us really had any time to get ready. It all happened in like 2 3 days,
Yeah.
probably.
No. Well, and it was such a trip actually because my husband and I were getting ready to go to a Burning Man regional event on like Friday.
Okay.
Um and on I think Wednesday or Thursday, like my company gave the word that like, oh no, we're shutting down and we're sending you all home.
Hmm.
And then the event organizer just made the hard decision of deciding to cancel the event because stuff had started getting bad. So we had actually prepped for living in the desert for 2 weeks already.
Okay.
So it was kind of funny, like as we were running around trying to like buy some more groceries, just being like, okay, well I think we're kind of okay because we
You
just were
already
prepping.
stocked.
Yeah,
Right. That's funny. No toilet paper shortage in your house. You
yeah,
were all ready for that.
yeah.
Well, that's good.
Thankfully we were good. Um, yeah, I mean, I think like initially, like I had just a ton of anxiety, and like like I think trying to balance the anxiety and kind of tamp that down, while also being like, all right, let's like try to go buy some bleach and get a
Yeah.
good face mask and like figure out the ways
Yeah.
that we're going to adapt to this.
I'm a news hound. So
Hmm.
I always watch the news a lot, and I remember when the initial stories about things happening up in Washington state started to come out back in probably the end of January-ish. Just for the hell of it, I went and ordered a bunch of masks back then
Hmm.
because just my gut told me something was
Yeah.
happening. So that by the time it got really bad, at least masks and hand sanitizer were in the house already.
Yeah.
Um, but it was remarkable to see how people initially reacted and the things that they reacted to. Like the shortage of toilet paper was one of those things I never fully understood. And the amount of time it took to just for paper goods in general to find their way back out into the supply chain was really weird to me.
Yeah.
Watching the whole length of the pandemic's been weird that way. It's like, okay, all of a sudden you can't buy a can of soup because there's no soup on the shelves. Why did that happen? And then it would last for 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden there'd be a new supply that would show up.
Yeah.
And so I guess we have some lessons we have to learn coming out of this on how to be better prepared next time.
Yeah, yeah. Like the intersection between like I don't like using the word prepper because it's got a little bit of a dirty connotation nowadays, but kind of like prepping and Burning Man or just like being ready for natural disasters actually crosses pretty well. So
Yeah.
I feel like generally I felt pretty prepared with my husband and I. And like thankfully a lot of the stuff we would normally get for Burning Man that we had shoved away in bins like helped because usually we need dust masks and gloves and goggles. So like we were able to just kind of pull some of our stuff out. But yeah, I remember at some point somebody being like, wait, so toilet paper is the apocalypse we now live in. I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's definitely been a strange year for all of us. What new tools did you pick up on to help get through the day to day since everything changed for you?
So work wise, kind of in the last 6 months, the companies I've been at have transitioned to using Figma, um, which is a cloud based collaborative design tool. Uh,
Okay.
so the great thing about it is I can give it to my team. And while I'm working live on designs, my team can kind of pop in at any point, see what I'm doing, give comments, give feedback. So that I've been tremendously happy that that was set up pre-pandemic and we were used to using it. So it made it a lot easier for people to access it. Um,
How about extended family? Do you have extended family and find it challenging to keep in touch?
yeah, we haven't done. We've done a couple like Zoom calls and tried to play like Jackbox games on them.
Yeah.
Which like if you're able to get over the technical hurdles to getting it running, it was actually really fun and really nice.
Yeah.
But it's also that balance. Like if all day at work I'm on a video chat, the last thing I want to do when I call my mom at the end of the day is also video chat.
Yeah.
So we've just stuck to like phone conversations. One surprising one actually that and it might be because I'm working more in the gaming industry now is that Discord has popped up a ton for me. Um,
Oh, okay.
and it's actually been really nice just to have like a couple of my close friends on Discord and we'll just turn it on and like eat dinner and then like play a couple games with people. And it at least gives that impression that like you've got other people in the room.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
People who I used to hang out with on a regular basis, we now, we'll do virtual cigars and happy hour like once a week on Zoom or something like that, and it's been okay. It's
Nice.
not the same as sitting across the room, but
Yeah.
it does the job. And only recently have I allowed myself like to go sit in an outside coffee shop with
Hmm.
with people other than my immediate family and sit across the table from them and spend some
Yeah.
time. So I
Nice.
guess we'll all get ready to get used to the new normal.
Yeah, yeah. We've done a
Um,
couple like bike rides too. Like our whole bright line has always been like if it's outside, like a limited number of people, but outside 6 foot at a distance, like that feels pretty safe right now.
yeah, I definitely agree with that. So what do you think the next 6 months look like for you?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like a lone pessimist right now.
Uh,
I feel work wise, I think it's going to be about the same. Like I don't think like I think work wise we're just going to continue to like every day at a time adapt to this new normal.
yeah. Have they made decisions that they're not going to bring people back into the office, or are they still planning on doing that?
I think we're still waiting to hear, but the last we heard was like January-ish. So
Yeah. Okay.
I know we've got a couple months. I'm worried that the winter might get a little bad, just as far as the pandemic goes. as well too. So like from a personal perspective, part of me is like, you're not going to get me to go sit in an office with a bunch of other people for a while.
Yeah, definitely not till flu season's passed, I think.
Yeah. So like, yeah, we like, I feel a little bit like October is going to be a little bit of a last hurrah before hibernating for the rest of the year. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
How has social media treated you through this? And I've found the experience of being on social media since all of this, well, it goes back before all of this started, to be less than great.
An
um
additional weight of exhausting. Yeah.
yes, actually all by itself. I've partitioned my social media life into basically three areas, right?
Hmm.
There's Facebook, which is about keeping in touch with old friends. There's LinkedIn, which is about business contacts and doing that kind of thing. And then there's Twitter, which is the Wild West.
Hmm. Yeah.
And there are definitely days when I go, I can't do this one anymore. I have to just skip it for the day.
Nope. Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting you brought that up because I've kind of done a similar thing. Like my Facebook can kind of be all over the place, and it tends to be the spot that there's probably more news articles that piss me off than anything.
Yeah.
But it is kind of where like a good chunk of my friends currently are. So it's usually like me personally trying to chat with folks. Like LinkedIn obviously is professional, and I tend to make my Twitter lean pretty professional.
Okay.
And really, I'll like check on it once every 6 months and then forget about it. Um,
Yeah.
and then I'll have a good reason to go back and be like, oh yeah, there's this Twitter thing.
Yeah.
Um, but I've
Yeah.
also actually, so for my like crafting and costume projects, I spun up a new Instagram profile that's like just dedicated to like costuming and cosplay. Um,
Oh, nice.
and it's actually been a really nice way to curate the feed. So I know that that's not like personal friends or historical stuff. Like it's just straight up costume porn. So sometimes
Okay.
it's a nice place to go hide and get a social media fix, but not be bombarded with all of the news of the day.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Do you do a lot of cosplay and things like back in the days when we left our houses? Were you doing a lot
Yeah.
of cosplay and uh, things like Comic Con and stuff like that?
Yeah, I have done stuff in the past. Not like a tremendous amount, but I just really love costuming and like look for like times to go do it. So now it's funny, now that I'm locked up and I can't go out and do that stuff, I'm looking at like, okay, well when it's safe, like where should I go and where what costumes should I make for the future?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's part of what's keeping me sane.
No, I hear you. Did you spend a lot of time with things like theater and all of that back in the real world?
I was a dancer growing up. Um
Okay.
so I was a little theater adjacent. I'm not great with acting, but like dancing and performing on stage is totally my thing.
Very
So,
cool.
yeah.
I guess it's possible to continue to practice that kind of stuff even though you're by yourself doing it.
Yeah,
I,
it's been a little hard because I've found it's hard to get the motivation to make a costume for something when you don't know when you're going to wear it or where. So I've had a little bit of like costume ADD.
yeah. Okay.
Um
I have a
yeah.
musician in the house and she's going absolutely bonkers.
Oh,
You know, one on one is great, but the idea of ensembles and things like that are pretty much at a standstill for her. Keeping her sane
yeah.
has been a little interesting, but with pandemics don't last forever, and all this will
Yeah.
pass at some point in the future.
Yeah, the year once it's safe for us to gather again is gonna be fucking crazy. Because like I imagine like every concert, every like hopefully everything will kind of come back roaring.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's it's not to get political, right? But that's the irony of this is everybody keeps talking about the economy and the economy coming back, and if we just did the right thing up front, we could make all of that stuff happen really quick. Because
yeah,
when the world opens up again, you're right, we're all going to go crazy
yeah,
getting back out there and just jumping back into all the things we miss. So
yeah.
cool.
Definitely wear a mask, wash your hands, take care of your people. Like
Yeah.
that's all we can do right now.
Yep. Yep. So anything I can plug for you? Anything you want to talk about? Let the audience
Oh,
know.
I don't have a ton. You can find me on Twitter at nstransky. Um,
Okay.
I post stuff on there every once in a while.
Okay.
And yeah, and then that actually probably is a link to my portfolio website, which has got some design work on there. But
Awesome.
yeah,
Noelle, thanks for taking the time to talk to me today.
absolutely. This has been lovely. Thank you for having me.